As a behavior shaping procedures, I am going to explain it using ASD behaviors. So I say ASD behaviors. It is displayed by children with ASD. It's not only just ASD behaviors. However, typical behaviors and then how we have to analyze those behaviors displayed by ASD children, because ASD is the most difficult disabilities for adults to work with. It's not because their behavioral issues are severe. It is very hard to understand and interpret their behaviors, especially antecedent, the cause of behaviors. So many teachers and parents struggle whenever they show those behaviors, especially just difficult emotional behaviors. It's very hard. They want to solve those issues. However, it's very hard to understand and follow their needs and demands, what those are. So let's say first job we gotta do, we have to interpret and analyze those behaviors, where those behaviors came. So mostly we believe whatever behaviors they display, it is stemmed from ASD characteristics. Even though DSM-5 said restricted repetitive behaviors, it is very comprehensive behaviors. They just put them all there, other than social issues and language issues and other difficulties. So these behaviors, when we analyze first, when we see those causes or where those behaviors are stemming from, first one is we cannot ignore their temperamental part. Their temperamental part is more like they got that from their parents. It's not afterborn, but inborn temperament. So their daddy is a very, impulsive and fast and active person. And then their children could get that characteristics. And their mom is very passive or just quiet and then gentle. And then their children can get those. So even though we have several children, a few children, it's just two kids we have. And then those two children are very opposite and north and south or east and west. That much they show opposite characteristics. So like, I have two sons and one is very active. It's not only physically and mentally very active, and the other one is very calm, and it's very hard to disturb him to be show temper. So we have a so opposite two boys, but most of our parents experience that it is regardless they have disabilities or not. It's just a natural inborn DNA gene-based temperament and personality traits, and then somehow characteristics. And then they have a learned behavior. Yes, ASD children also learn, even though they just looks like they're all shutting down from the external world. However, they learn it's not really like imitate other people's, but how other people respond to their behaviors. So when they cry, and then their mom is very ready to help them and figure out what they need. It's like a newborn babies when they cry, and either they're hungry or they get wet diaper. It's like similarly these children, because their language issues and social issues, they cannot fully express what they need with linguistic forms and communication tools. So they just show those certain behaviors. It could be incidental or intentionally, just whatever reasons they did, and then they could get their adults' attention, and then it make them adopt it again and then show it again. It could be just like a regular children. babies, actually, those smart babies, in the beginning, it was incidental behavior. Then they learned through those results what they want to get, and they got that. And then it become, learned behavior through those, repetition, and then eventually became habitual behaviors. It's just similar to these ASD children. It's how they display the certain behavior without even, any purpose. However, their adults responded right away and got their attention. And then they slowly use those behaviors, especially they learn the word through their, eyes. They're just visual sights more than auditory sides. So no matter how much adults explained about, reasoning and all kinds, but still it doesn't work. So visually, they see the adult's response and then they adopt those behavior, and then it became habitual behavior. So these learned and intentional habitual behaviors, it's just similar to general children, just regardless of whatever disabilities they have or weaknesses or smart children, they have those children's basic characteristics. It's just like they learn through imitation of others and the world around them. Is ASD children have those. So first, I said it could be their behavior is based on their temperament. They just born with. And then second one is a learned habitual behavior is by nurturing environment, because of their parents, how they responded. So when we say just spoil the children, it is pretty much like a learning, their environment, right? Nurturing environment, mostly permissive parents, protective parents, and inconsistent parents. So those parents are ready to for their children, and then mostly just gently. It's not intentionally parents permissive and protective and inconsistent, especially permissive parents. They may have their own personality wide. They are very gentle and soft, and they could not stand the children's whining and tantrum and crying, so they just let them do it or have it whatever they want. It's not whatever, but even though they still know this is not right, but they're just personality wide, they can't stand their crying, so it happens repeatedly. So it's like the same, like those behaviors by the after birth. So it's like a nurturing environment. Learned behavior is ASD children still have those behaviors. And then the last one is specifically ASD. I don't say ASD stemmed behavior, but because of that ASD, they have a lack of those actions, and somehow they're just weaknesses could have those behaviors. So it could be pathological reasons, physiological reasons, and or like a self-stimulatory behavior. So nobody can explain that, right? This is self-stimulatory behavior. It's like many people said it's a meaningless behavior, but it has a somehow expression of their anxiety and the uncomfortable, discomfort, emotional discomfort when they just are in the unfamiliar settings and the new person they met, and then there are some demandings, and then they just show those discomfort, through their stimming, right? So those self-stimulatory behavior is typical, I would say somehow unconscious. So it's not they display that intentionally with any purpose to get something. It's not that. So, but however, in the environment, it's an expression of their emotional states. It could be. Okay, so that's a self-stimulatory. So we have three groups of, those C's, how this behavior comes. It's one is gene-based, DNA-based temperament. And then second one is a nurturing environment-based. They learn the behavior and became habits. And then last one is autism stemmed behaviors. So those three groups is those behavior stems. And then next one, behavior shaping wide. how we can categorize these behaviors. So big one, it's just like a general children's behaviors. I categorize two sets. First one is categorized by the frequencies and magnitude, intensity. So it's like, it's focused on behaviors themselves, so how those behaviors are displayed. It's like a disruptive, interruptive, distractible behaviors in the environment. That is the most prevalent behaviors. It's not severe. However, it is severe enough to interrupt the whole class flow, instructional flow, right? And then of passive off-task behaviors. So it's not interrupting others. However, they interrupt their own learning. It's a very small behaviors, just they crawl the floor and then just, play with the small items, those kind of, passive or daydreaming. So I categorize all those as a passive off-task behaviors. So it's not interrupting others, but themselves. And then third one is a non-compliance and defiance behavior, and then aggressive violent behavior. And then next one is more like, how we say that it's like, their own disability-based behaviors, disability-related behaviors, like a self-stimulatory behaviors or any other people skill-based behaviors. Those are all disability cognitive deficit generated behaviors. So those are the behavior form itself. We see that, however, the other wide, and we see behavior shaping wide, we have to analyze those behaviors based on the precursors. So basic precursors like, cognitive deficits and social emotional deficits, and then cognitive maturity, and then academic difficulties, right? And then family related, environmental factor based. So it's like families, even, teachers' personality and teachers' teaching styles, and then parents' rearing styles. Those are all impact their behaviors, like learned behaviors is like permissive parents and inconsistent parents. They could generate those behaviors. So those are big categories we could do that. However, ASD behaviors, I categorize, this is for the behavior shaping purpose. And first one, I count self-disciplinary behaviors, the most mildest one. It's only behavior shaping wide, because we do not, intend to shape their stimulatory behaviors. It is very hard because, as I said, it's more like autism STEM, steaming and scripting, and those are, it's expression of them. It's not really like difficult behaviors. However, it distracts the classroom if it gets loud, right? So I see them, just put them in the category 1, because we are not going to intentionally shape this behavior. However, these behaviors gradually down and up is based on the autism itself. So many children with autism, ASD, they receive therapies, they receive education. So those therapies, education, it is strongly related to their consciousness. So their consciousness, especially self-consciousness, self-awareness, and then they see the people skills. So their people skill increase, and then they see other people's, how they perceive their stimulatory behaviors, and then they recognize it, and then gradually their self-consciousness, self-awareness increase. That means they aware the whole world, right? And then they can interact with the world, and then they can reciprocally interact with the world, and then they could control themselves. So these stimulatory behavior is based on themselves got control. It's not by the shaping. It doesn't matter how much time you said stop, not doing, and then it doesn't work. They could stop for a second, but it just comes back. So that is the, first one. And then second one, I say learned and habitual behaviors. This learned and habitual behavior is a purposeful behavior. They have a purpose, right? That means it's communication tools, like other children use behaviors as a communication tools to get their parents' attention, and then they can get through, what they want. So children with ASD shows have these learned and habitual behaviors. One of the examples is like a temper tantrums, emotional outburst. Many people believe that this is ASD-based behaviors. It's not. It could be learned behaviors based, to get through what they need and what they want. And especially when they are demanded by to do work, they don't want to work. And then they show those, tantrums. That is the, communication of I don't want to do it. And then the teacher just strongly, parents just strongly ask, and then, their tantrum becomes higher, and then to get more shock. Or when they need something, want something, they want to eat that, and parents, like, they are very obsessive, especially obsessive interest, they got stopped, and then they just show those behaviors. So those are all learned behaviors, and then habitual behavior became habit because it's their communication tools to get what they want. So I said it's like a purpose behind, right? So it's like a meaningful behaviors. It has a meaning in that behaviors. And then third one I count is oversensitivity. I know, most of people believe the oversensitivity as a part of, sensory processing issues. So most of OTs and school people and then parents try to accommodate their environment instead of touching the child. The touching doesn't mean just like a physically touch. However, working on the child, they try to change those environment and accommodate those environment and modify those environment, not to stimulate them much. So I'm not saying just every single oversensitivity is, modifiable and shapeable. However, oversensitivity, many of oversensitivity comes by inexperience. It is true because we all have oversensitivity. Any children have oversensitivity regardless of they have disabilities or not. And I'm very oversensitive about the water. I have a big fear about the water. I have a big fear about the height. And I just have many oversensitivity. And then some people cannot even take any sour food. Some people cannot take any, spicy food. It's all oversensitivity, right? It is a matter of I know what I don't like, I like. Based on that, we control ourselves and be ready for that. However, these children don't have those systems. So they just have those oversensitivity, and then it becomes a panic state. And then they just they are very frightened from it. And then they have to fight against it. So to get out of it, to avoid it, or they just freeze there, or they just run away, flight, right? So they show those three behaviors when they face those anything oversensitive items. However, let's see, because of their behaviors, especially their fighting behaviors or just flighting behaviors, and parents try to protect them. Most of parents do that because basically young children, young babies, our job is protecting them, right? So anything they don't like, cry harshly, and then we try to stop them and protect them. And then those protection make these children less experience, right? Because parents protect and prevent those environments. So this is one example, how parents know their child has a disability, and then parents know their child don't have a disability, and then doesn't have a disability, and then their attitudes are totally different. This attitude is their rearing attitude and then educational attitude as well. And then their beliefs. So let's say my son, I'm very scared of water, and then my first son has a same scary. So as soon as he's born, we just every bathing time, that little bodies fought just like incredibly. And my mom and I, because there is no way I could have bathed him myself. He's fighting, it's just like those newborn babies fighting. Is in the beginning, he doesn't have it only reflex, right? Still those reflex moves physically, and then he cried so hard, and then I just couldn't stand that, and then I was naturally scared because this is my first experience as a mom, and then those that little body could not express what he needs verbally. So it was a very scary time and nervous time. And he showed those until age 6. He hated taking a shower. And he did not like, most children, he came over to this country, United States at age 3. And then, all over just swimming pools, and the kids loved, go to swimming, and then many children. And we lived in student apartment on campus. However, there were, swimming pool, but my son resisted not to go there. However, if my child has disabilities, I believe my attitude could be different as a mom, even though I was in education and PhD student. I would just say, okay, he has oversensitivity, and then I just very careful not to be around the water. However, he did not show any disability, and he was actually a smart boy. So I tried to expose him to water more than less. So every time he protested, I just explained that. And then one day there was a birthday party. He really liked to go. However, it was in the swimming pool. And then it was his just like deep thought. He could not decide. And then I just told him just like, you don't have to go. It's a swimming pool. You cannot go into swimming. And then just for a long thought for about 1 or 2 weeks. And then he decided to go. And then he went to the water. And because he even could not go with this tube or those babies tube on the arm, it doesn't matter. He could not go. But that birthday party, he saw his peers all in the water, how much they swim and enjoy. And then he could get into water with a but he refused to have a tube because it embarrassed him. None of his friends had those tubes. So he went there. However, he could not get off. So he held that swimming bar, and he stayed there. And then I just watched him. I felt so sorry for him. And I just kept told once in a while, I told him, are you okay? You want to get out? And he said, no. He was very just, firm and then stayed there. However, while he's watching his friends play, and then he just, I found him doing this hold it off his hand, open his hand on the bar. Bar is here. He open and then grab. Open and grab. I see him testing himself in the water. He tested himself in the water and then let it go and then grab, let it go and then grab. And then I slowly see his hands are off the bar. So before it was up and grab, and now it's off and then grab, off and grab. I see those, those span, of the grip is like a longer and longer and longer I could see. And then eventually I saw him without holding and then just float in the water. It was amazing to see how that little 6 years old tested his body in the water. He was so, deadly fearful. And after that, I asked him if he wants some swimming lesson. And he said yes. And then it was 3 seasons summer swimming lesson. It was 4 state, stage phase lesson. So I just had or 8 or 12 weeks swimming lesson, and then I just paid. And he finished those all stage, those 12 weeks is in 4 weeks. And then he was a smart boy, and he got himself. After that, he swam. Still, he didn't like to swim, and then he swam until fifth grade. And then he told me, just this is enough, mom, and then I'm gonna stop. So he stopped. However, now he has a job. He has to live in the water and ocean. So it is amazing to see, but I'm not just trying to brag about my son. However, how our beliefs and attitude, parents' attitude, the teachers' attitude could be different. It is a perspective. So because a child does not have a disability and we push them to go more. However, if child has disabilities, and then our attitude becomes right away, protecting them, right? It is just like the same when newborn babies started walking. However, by age 12 months, it's like milestone age for the walking, right? Standing up at least. However, child does not stand up or just could stood up. However, could a little bit of a cruise walking. However, still just child hold there and they could not have a free walking yet. And then most parents, what do they do? They just look at and then give them more practice, hold their hands and try to just walk with them, and then just have them get those sense and that leg strength so they can be independent walker and independent runner, right? Why do we do that? Because we knew human beings are supposed to walk. They are just tracked in a straight up, not like animals, 4 limbs walking. So we all know that. So we have expectation, and then we push our children to be like that. They know, it's so hard. Other children, even 8 months, they just running around. Why my child is a 13 months old child could not walk? And then they just, instead of giving up, or instead of protecting them to get hurt, even though they get hurt, parents still push them to practice, not just force them practice. However, they try to stimulate them and then having fun from walking. So let them practice more and more and more, right? It's not protect them. So because you hold them up and they put their hands, grab something, leave them alone. You don't do that. Not really. Most of the parents just do that, and then they know if they let them go, and then they may just get hurt. Still, they do it, right? However, if we have a child already have identified the disabilities, and then parents hesitate to do that because it hurts them, and you never know. And then they have a doubt. However, most parents without any disability, they identify the disability. Those 12 months old, 13 months older do not walk. And then they still believe they will walk. It's just a matter of timing. However, do we think that if we have a child with disabilities? So it's the same logic for the oversensitivity. Many children have those oversensitivities, and then they fight and they scream and show tantrums. However, it could be their oversensitivity. It does not mean they do not learn. Still, they don't like it. Still, they can learn, and then they can be ready when they grow up. They know it. There is no one person like a winter wind, right? Windstorm, nobody like it. However, the child has a wind oversensitivity. And then what do? We protect them. So we just be careful, because whenever just a windy day, accidentally parents just like in the morning was fine, but afternoon suddenly there is a wind, and then they just could help because the child is already in the school. So when they pick them up and then take them in the car, and then they already show those wind, and the parents just cover them, right? And then when they get out, and then parents suddenly forgot or something or distracted, and then forgot to cover them, and then hold them out from take them out from the car, and almost they drop them because their kids, just like a child, just tantrum is just so severe. It's oversensitivity, so it's very dangerous, right? It could hurt your child. So what do? They just protect them. They don't expose them to wind, right? So this wind is one example. So because nobody likes a winter wind, right? But we love spring wind. So we can teach them what wind is. It's like my son learned about the water and then himself, right? And then it's just a matter of how gradually we expose them to wind, and then let them learn about wind, okay? If we believe in our children's potential cognitive ability and capability, their potential, they have a potential because they do not naturally develop them like other children. However, our children, just in this status, they could not open their flower yet. They are still have it inside. So it's a potential. We know, or just early spring, most of those flowers are having this state. We knew it's gonna open. I just watch my trees backyard, and then we have a big window. Every time I went to kitchen, because we kitchen in front of outside the kitchen door, there is a big flower tree. And then I see them how they just process gradually. And then every time I see early spring right now at this time, and then some of the flowers already bloomed, I see them every time. I think about our children with ASD and other disabilities. So that's their status right now. And then who can make them? Because other children, naturally, they open and they bloom, but we have to help them to develop, because the developmentally delayed, those potential cognition still inside them could not get out. So we cannot just open it right away and then it's gonna break, right? So we gradually, who has to get out? They have to get out. Our job is not pull them out of those potential deep breaths under the ground. Our job is to let them get out. We have them prepared to get out. So about the wind, it's just saying their oversensitivity. We cannot just have them just put them out, just let them just experience. We cannot do that. However, we just teach them this is a wind, and then they learn about the characteristics of wind. We just very basic with this flap move just hands, and then they have this wind, and then they have just this sheet, and then just like this side is less, right, than this one, so less, and then we just have them just have this theory, or just even far away, just let them know about what wind is, and then they do well, and then decide more wind, right, and then more faster, make more wind. It's a paper wind. And then eventually fan, like a paper fan, real fan with a phrase. It could make more wind in the summer when we have electricity and everywhere we had a hand fan, right? So we moved to that one, and then slow, and then a little closer, and then more and hard, and then electric fan. And then just like springtime is a very great time. So it's like a smart mom, parents could use springtime. And then open the windy day, not severe wind, just windy day, open the window a little bit, and then have them just mom and child go together, just have them their skins out and see, and let them feel it. Wind. You keep saying just wind. This is a wind. Wind is fresh, wind. And then open a little bit more based on the child does not protest. So we goes a little bit open more. Eventually child just put the head out with the mom and dad. And then you hold the child's hands, walk out to the porch a few seconds and coming in. And then child has a favorite song or something, a little bit distract, and then out and so in. And then 5 seconds and inside. And then 10 seconds and inside. And then hold their hands, and then a few steps on the driveway, and then coming in. And then eventually go end of driveway and then walk in. And then eventually hold the mom's hand and then walk outside. And then summer, barely windy day, and then fall, you just go the steps again. It's like a little bit chilly wind. This is a wind, and then child learns hot wind and chilly wind and cold wind. So in the winter, say it's a windy day, so we have to protect ourselves. So let's warm, and then you have a scarf, hat, and all those gears. So only just a smaller, and then they even could have mask, and then they just go out. So this is oversensitivity. Still, the child has oversensitivity, sensitivity. However, once a child learned about the wind, those characteristics, and then child learns to deal with it. That's what our job is. Whose deal? Child deal with. However, we teach them what wind is, what sour taste means, what spinach taste means. We just gradually let them wet, like a sponge just soaking the water gradually. So it's the same method we use. That's what we call it, shaping. So that's oversensitivity. Many oversensitivity, we could gradually shape them and get used to it. Again, I still got afraid of wind, but I know, not me, no water. I barely go to swimming pool. However, I know those swimming. I know that swimming water does not kill me. So that's what we teach our children. And the next one is the more difficult one, is obsessive interest. This obsessive interest has been a long time, and it could also start by when they saw the adults in shock or reactions, and then they just started having that to get more attention. And all kinds of reasons behind. However, their obsessive interest is okay. Only just like a compulsive behavior is a matter, because they are so obsessive in certain color. They are obsessive in just stockings, females stocking, those feeling. And those, obsessive interest even, goes with just like females, chest boobs. And every time they just see them, and then they just run, charge off, and then they just grab, touch it, and then just go. So these kind of obsessive interests, especially those, children after puberty ages, and then really like frighten other people, and it's not appropriate behavior. So we have to shape those behavior, right? And then like a flossing, toilet water is just flushing compulsively, and then it's inside their home. Still, parents it's a very annoying and just hard. You constantly hear those flushing sounds and then water bills. However, they just go to school, and then in the hallway they know where bathroom is, and then they just charge off from the line, and then to do that, and each bathroom tools, they go both, and then they just do that. And then somebody's house they go, and then they just do that. So those are oversensitivity and then obsessive interest really limit many parents' social life, because it's very hard to take them, other places. And then they have to have a babysitter, and then those children, you protect them inside, and then have a less opportunity, and then they'll have a less learning opportunities. Right? So it's a lot of difficulties. So obsessive interest is like a flossing, and then all those paper ripping. Every time they see just papers, especially at home, just like books and magazines, and in schools and a classroom textbooks, and they just like obsessively or just scribbles everywhere they go, and then throwing whatever they just grab to throw. It's not whenever they mad and they throw, that's a little bit different. However, this throwing is more like it's a obsessive interest, but it could be more get just other people's attention. And then when they get bored, they show these kind of behaviors more. So either way, they feel bored or they just get mad. These throwing. And so all kinds of obsessive interest. However, this shape is based on what their interests are. Just like a flossing one, but many one is like you could replace that one with alternative functions, actually just like better skills instead of behaviors in the skills, like a ripping, you could change it to craft behaviors. It's still shaping very one by one. Okay, so it's like when ripped, and then instead of just ripping, and then you have just colored paper, and then you have just a plastic wine glass, and then you just rip intentionally with the child. Everything you gotta do before child initiate, okay, before they show triple side, because it's educational, it's instruction, shaping. So you just have just like the child don't feel, they don't show it, but you just take the child to the table and show that this is colored paper basket and show it. You don't have to explain, this is a basket. You can read this paper. Don't just explain children too much. Many teachers in their lesson plans and just always explain or ask. It's okay. You just show it, they know it. So you just take out the paper and then give one to the child, and then you get one, and then child just like look, and then you just rip it. Read, and then just watch the child does it, and then you say good, and then you just keep ripping, and then two wine glass there, and then you make a small pieces, and then you put them in those pieces in the wine glass, because it's a transparent glass. So you put them, and then it's very colorful inside. If you just rip the red paper, it's all red, right? And then you just display it on the window sill or just shelf, if you have a shelf. And then it's a beautiful. And then about an hour later, you just do it, take a child to the table, and then do it again, and then do it. And then an hour later. So it's based on you have a baseline data, how often the child just rips. I know it's unexpected behaviors, but still, so irregularly, and then between those times, and the child kind of, a little bit slow down, but those, obsessive, compulsive behaviors. And then eventually you cannot display that just forever, right? So what do you do? On the sketchbook, big paper, poster, paper or sketchbook, you take it out, and then you make just a circle there. And then on the circle, you just glue those circle, and then rip the paper. You first rip the paper, and then take out the sketchbook, and then make just a circle, and then glue the circle, because each paper is very hard to glue. So glue those circle, and then just you take a one, and then put your turn, and then child does my turn, and then I do, and then your turn do it, and then eventually child just good job, 2, 3, do 4, do 5. Let them child. It's like a mosaic art. And then triangle shape, rectangular shape. And eventually child draws, you teach child draws, especially scribbling behavior. It's similarly, you can shape like that. So they draw, and then they do it. And then gradually this, becomes a, meaningful object. It's like a house, apple, and then the child make art. And then what do? You just display on the bulletin board, or just in the home, and then home wall. And then child sees what ripping means. So instead of stopping, you cannot stop their obsessive interest, right? And then you change their ripping, and then child knows here is just object, instructional goal is child rips only certain paper, and then child has a certain place. particular place. So you locate the place. So table has those, basket colored paper, right? So place and then time. Later, you can make a schedule and then only schedule the time. So you teach the clock and then you do it like you just have a paper clock or a real clock. You just turn the clock, 1 o'clock, and then art. And then you sit down with the child and then show it. So do it. So child learns only certain paper he can read, and then only assign the time, and then only assign the place. Those 3 you assigned, and then our magic ASD characteristics. So what is that? It's a routine, right? So once it became routine, and then they only do in a certain place. So at home, and parents have a same small room, playroom, and then make a small table, sitting down table, and just have the basket there, and then child will do the same. And then, yes, the house could be covered by all those displays, but eventually child, those obsessiveness will be slow down and calm down, and later the child grows up, grow and then aged, and then they may lose those interests. Okay, so those are obsessive interests. I'm just showing you, saying this one example. Okay, ripping and then scribbling is the same. We teach them drawing skills very gradually in the beginning. So it's the same. Where to scribble, we assign the table, only sketchbook, or just like you have a paper book. It's like a blank computer paper. You just with a spiral and then you go to Home Depot or somewhere and bound those. So the child knows that this is a drawing. So only scribbling, you do not have to say drawing, and you could say even scribble, and then a child comes and then you just teach them from the drawing. Circle is hard to perfect. Circle is very hard, but easiest one because it starts and end at the right spot. It's much better, easier than drawing triangle or those angled shapes. Okay, and then circle can expand many meaningful object drawing with a circle. Number 1, we can make a apple with a circle, and then we can draw all kinds of sports balls with a circle, right? And then we can make a teddy bear with a circle and snowman with a circle. So once a child can draw a circle, and then you can expand the drawing skills with those meaningful object drawing. So children see those transformation, and then gradually they just have a routine now, and then only the certain place, designated place, and then designated book, notebook or just a drawing book, and then they just, whenever they feel like a drawing, and then they just show just a teacher whatever signs you made, and then teacher says, okay, yes, you finished that work, and then you can go to the table and you can draw. So actually you can use that one as a reward. Okay, so after their hard work, and then the most difficult one is aggressive and violent behavior. It is a self-harming behavior. It could harm other people, because this is self-harm, and the next step is just harming other students, other peers, especially when children pass those puberty time, and then other, general children have, all those adolescents, they have a difficult time, right? Just like, children with ASD and other disabilities, they have a similar emotional, those turmoils and then they don't know how to handle those. And they usually, it comes out as aggressive and violent behaviors. And in the, before those self-harming behavior tantrums from very young age, right? It just harm themselves, and then eventually they could develop that. And then the other one is just attacking others. So I saw, some boys just attack their parents. So it does not, mom especially, because mom is much smaller than them physically. And then once they experience mom could not protect them, and then see that weakness, and then they attack mom regularly whenever they just feel bad, or whenever they just feel hard, and whenever they are demanded to do something, and then they just attack mom. just really literally beat mom. And then eventually mom, they have to have a lock inside the lock at the door, because in the middle of the night and child may have some sleep issues, and then they just run into the parent's bed, and then just like a bed in the middle of the night, just mom got beat by their child, and those kind of beating. And then usually they just touch other, especially just females, because females are smaller and look weaker. And then when they started the first time, they just scream and shout and show those fear, and then they sense those, and then after that, they repeat those behaviors whenever they want to feel. So those aggressive violent behavior is the hardest one. And this one also, we have to work on those shaping. So in the beginning, I said behavior shaping is not just like a random behavior we shape. We shape behaviors, the most mildest one to the most difficult one. So it could be just how we measure which one is the mildest, which one is the most difficult one. And only this one is applied to ASD. And then general behaviors, children's behavior, when I have a time, and then I'm going to talk about that another time. So I count because we need some scales and then some measurable system to which one is we call it rank order behaviors. So I count the self-stimulatory behavior as just one, because this one does not harm others, although it interrupts others, so distract others. So I just put that this one is a 1, and then any learned habitual behavior is a 2. Why I put this one, even though it's a habitual? Because they know what they are doing. So once a student recognize that, and then it's a much easier to work on. Okay, and then number 3 is oversensitivity, because mostly oversensitivity is just get them wet and experience. It's a shaping down. So that's the oversensitivity. It's not that hard once you know how to approach those. And then 4th rank is this obsessive interest, because it involves teaching other skills, using their interest and using those, it's not skills, it's behavior issues, right? However, we just use those as a skill and function. So let's say use those obsessive interest function to skills, okay, meaningful skills. And so that's the 4th one. And then 5th one is aggressive and violent behaviors. It's even though the precursors of aggressive violent is not difficult one. However, form of those behaviors, some skillful, I don't know, just ABA specialist, behavior specialist. It's a really good one. So, and even me, I could do aggressive and violent behaviors in the middle. I could do that, but it's generally just a regular teachers without that good training, and then it requires there some personality issues too, because aggressive and violent, you need some gut, some authority gut you need, and then you got some mom's strength to do that. So it's hard for the people maybe never had their own children deal with those behaviors, and young and novice, and then very difficult. So that's why I put this aggressive violent behavior to in the number 5. So we do, and then every child behavior, we just write down all list those observed behaviors, and then we analyze based on these numbers. And then there is no one behavior only 2, one behavior only 4. We just all these behaviors just mark whatever applied. So certain behavior could be all 5, they may colored, and certain behavior only 2 and 3, and certain one is a 3 and 4. Just you do applied cross-categorical, okay? You applied all those, and then you combined those scores, and then you just give the rank from the smallest number, lowest number is a 1, and then highest number as a last number. So then we start shaping from the number one, most mildest behavior, not the most severe behavior. That's what functional behavior assessment, we just have a target behavior is the most severe behavior. So that's why we may fail. Most of our behavior intervention could be failed because of just who involved there. And then most severe behavior, their resistance, it's very, very high. So what do? We just do from the most mildest one, and then child has the least resistance, refusal, and then we work on that, and then that one completely, gone or replaced or just and then mastery level, middle mastery level, and then we add the second behavior, not just remove this one and then second behavior. We have this behavior and then we add the second behavior. Mostly we work on second behavior, however, still this one is under our monitoring. And then this behavior, second behavior is mostly, modified or just shaped, and then third behavior. So 1, 2, 3. And then fourth behavior. That's how we build these behaviors and shape this behavior, and then until the last minute. But while we are doing this easiest, mildest behavior, and then you will see the other behaviors, the intensity magnitude could a little bit, milder, reduced. So it's like a behaviors all chained. It's like a chaining of, or let's say child has 6 behaviors, you could see, categorize, and then these 6 behaviors could be, numbered like this and ranked, and then 1 to 6, and then later behaviors become, you could see just milder and milder. Even aggressive behavior is turned down, and then it's much, much milder than previous one, because you intentionally work on this behavior management, behavior shaping as an instruction, and then you could see those children and then follow your instruction better and direction better. And then these shaping, it's like a one book volume. So I'm just writing, almost just still writing and revising and then refining my books. And then I haven't contacted any publishers yet. I'm just gonna finish this one, really like a refined piece. And you will see just a lot of behaviors, involved much more ones. Okay. However, today I talked about this ASD behaviors as a diagnostic behavior shaping procedures I developed. Based on that, I'm just sharing this one. Okay.